Right, so while I've been preparing for this talk, I've done a couple of blog posts. I've actually set up a pattern library called darkpatterns.org, and I've been talking to quite a lot of people about it while I've been writing it. And quite a few people have asked, why are you actually doing this? In fact, making a guidebook for evil designers. You're making it very easy for them to go along to that site and basically copy all of the tricks that you've described there. So actually, the answer to that's quite simple. The reason I've done it is because all kinds of con artistry rely on the hustler having knowledge that the victim doesn't have. They have to know about the trick, and the victim can't know about it or it won't work. So as soon as that knowledge is shared, then they've got no tricks they can pull, right? Scams don't work if the victim knows what the hustler's trying to do. So that's one of the main driving reasons why I've developed a lot of interest in this. And one of the questions I want to sort of try to tackle in this talk today is the question of why we lose good designers to the dark side. Because if you think about it, there are actually quite a number of big brands who are using dark patterns, like dirty tricks, to increase their conversion rates, which means they must have people like us working for them, doing the design, running the A/B testing, running the user research, and iterating on it. So, I mean, that kind of perplexes me. How does that happen? And that's one of the questions I want to kind of think about. In doing so, I'd like you to join me in a game of Let's Pretend. It's a thought experiment, so don't worry, you don't actually have to do anything. So let's pretend you're head of design at a fictitious low-cost airline, and it's your first day at this new job, okay? So you're in charge of all of the UI design, you're in charge of all the analytics, metrics, and all that sort of thing, okay? So you go into work on your first day, and you meet your new boss. And he says to you, let's talk about sources of revenue. And he goes on to explain in a very patronizing manner that basically only a fraction of your revenue is made from ticket price, shown there in green. Most money is made through all the other stuff, like charging people to check in their bags, charging them quite a lot of money for a bottle of water and food on the airplane, charging them for priority boarding. That's where most of the money is, right? So the first task he gives you is to achieve an uplift in insurance purchases. And this is the insurance purchase page on the fictitious airline that you work at. Okay, so he goes on to explain to you that actually there's a few cash flow problems at the moment, and in fact, really, really relying on this uplift. So, if you can't make this work, then there's going to probably be redundancies for people in your team, possibly even you. So the pressure's on. I mean, it's your first day, and they're already messing with you like this. It's kind of pretty heavy. So just to describe this page a bit, I don't know, can you actually read that? It looked great on my monitor at work, but it's kind of a bit blurry here. This is your typical insurance upsell page. So the consumers pick their flights and they want to check out. And the site's just saying, hey, wait a minute, before you check out, do you want to buy insurance? And on this page, the user has to explicitly say yes or no before they can proceed on to the next page. Neither is pre-selected as a default. So the recipe, the kind of mix that we've got going on so far, right? We've got this kind of aggressive, high-pressure working environment. And we've also got a really big blinkered emphasis on metrics. You've been asked to focus on this one thing and this one thing only in your job in the next few weeks, right? So you go off and you do a bit of reading. You're still on your first day at your new job, right? So you go and look in the box of books you brought with you to work, and you read about persuasive technology and the psychology of persuasion and stuff on behavioral economics, which is all really interesting, but it's a bit theoretical. It's not telling you how to actually redesign that page, which is what you need, right? So instead, you decide to go off and look for some real-world examples. How do other businesses persuade consumers to do stuff? So this is the first example you stumble upon. It's quite well known, this example. It's kind of been all over the web recently. The NHS, or organ donor registers around the world, basically. Here in the UK, you have to sign up to the register to say you want to be an organ donor, so it's opt-in. But in other countries, it works the other way around. They assume that everyone in the country is an organ donor, and you sign up to say you don't want to be one. So there's quite an interesting piece of research by Johnson and Goldstein, you can see here, in a paper called Do Defaults Save Lives? So on the left there, the kind of gold area, they're the opt-in countries, like the UK, and on the right, there's the opt-out countries like Belgium, France, Hungary, and so on. You can see there's a big difference in the graph there. So it's the kind of getting up off your ass, off the sofa to go and register works both ways. And in the case of the blue opt-out countries, that's really good news if you need if you need organs donated to you. So, I mean, what we're looking at here isn't exactly the same as your insurance upsell problem, right? But it does indicate that defaults can have a really big impact on human behavior. And in fact, that difference there is statistically significant, 16.3 increase in organ donation when you switch the defaults to opt out, right? So this kind of gets you thinking. This is the oxfam.com donation page. So you come along here when you want to make a donation, you fill in that small form there in the middle in the green. So you might put £10 there. And oh, actually, if you have a look closely, you'll see regular monthly donation is selected, it's pre-selected when the page loads. Okay, so I expect the designers of this page would argue that they're simply trying to encourage people to do something. It's a form of persuasion. You know, look at this. This is the option we recommend. This is what most people do. You should do it too. Or they might say, well, since most people are selecting it, we're actually making it easier because there's one less click involved. So, you know, it's easier for all those people. But I mean, is it? Because on the other hand, there could be quite a few people coming through here who are putting £10 in, meaning to do a single donation, not realizing, and then clicking next. So end up setting up a monthly payment on by direct debit. So is it ethical? In my opinion, actually, I think this example is ethical because, I mean, look at the form. It's quite small. There's not much going on there. They're not trying to hide the options. So although they're pushing things a bit by pre-selecting one of the options, it seems okay, doesn't it? I mean, it's for Oxfam as well, which is for the greater good. So that seems okay. What about another example? Why don't we take that same design pattern and look at it on another site? This is comment.co.uk. This is the page you get to if you try and buy an iPad. So you go along, you put an iPad in your basket, then you go to try and check out, and look below, suddenly something's appeared there that you haven't put in. You've got an iPad case there for 30 quid that's just appeared out of nowhere. Now, what they're doing is they're arguing that they're doing it in your interest. It's to protect your iPad from bumps and scratches, which is a nice idea, but if they really cared, they'd put it in there for free. Well, I mean, it's the same design pattern that we looked at before, but in this case, it's clearly quite naughty. So is this ethical? I'd argue not at all. It's actually very sneaky. They're putting something into your basket without asking your permission. They're just sneaking it in there. So these kind of design patterns, I mean, probably most kinds of dark patterns focus on two sort of slices of the pie. So of the people who pass through that page, a certain percentage will, firstly, simply not notice what's happened and make the purchase anyway, and never be any wiser. They might unpack the stuff and then think it just came with it and never look at the receipt and realise they've been charged more. And then there'll be another percentage who do notice after completing the purchase, but by that time they're too busy to do anything about it, or they might be too lazy or simply too busy at that point. So they kind of, you can imagine unpacking your new iPad, looking at the case that's come with it, then realising how much that it's cost you 30 quid more. So do you then repackage it all and send it back, or do you say, oh, is it really worth the effort? You have to weigh up your effort versus the time. And so dark pattern designers take advantage of these two slices of pie. And admittedly, they're not big slices, but there's money in them. So and that's what it's all about. Let's look at a different example now. Let's look at the page you get to from, if you visit the Wired magazine website in the UK and you want to set up payment for having it posted to your home, this is the page you get to. So if you want a year's worth of subscription. So it's a fairly standard, boring-looking form. You've got to fill in your address and so on. And at the bottom, there's the marketing options. Now, let's not forget the marketing options have a cash value with them. You know, if you opt into third-party marketing, then they will just sell your details on, right? So what does Condé Nast do to try and get as many people as possible to sign up? Well, it's a bit like if you want to opt out, it's a bit like a dance. You have to go skip, skip, tick, tick, skip, skip, tick, tick. And if you get a foot wrong on any of those, you'll end up opting into something. And if it's third party sort of by phone or by post, there might be a number of companies who you have to then tell to stop doing it. It's a load of hassle, right? So it's probably likely that they've actually A/B tested this area and they've found out that this is the design that works the best. It delivers the best conversion rates because most people end up opting in. Well, it's no surprise. It's downright trickery when you look at it like that, isn't it? Okay, so let's look at another example. This example really takes the biscuit, actually. The Evil Genius Award goes to Ryanair. I'm not sure if it surprises some of you, but let's look at this example. This is the insurance upsell page that Ryanair have. At the top of the page there, it says passenger details, that first box there at the top, okay? Now, we all know that people, when they're on the web, they normally scan read. They don't read every single word on every single page. And the design of this area here really takes advantage of that fact in a very nefarious way, okay? So firstly, there's the section title, which is passenger details. That sounds quite innocuous, doesn't it? It sounds like where you just fill in the details for your ticket. And if you get it wrong, they might not even let you get on the plane, so you want to fill it in right. But actually, it's the upsell area. So let's zoom in and have a better look at that. So a certain number of users are going to fill it in and then skip over all of the blurb and then just end up looking at that drop-down box there in the bottom right, which says, please select country of residence. Now, that sounds like an innocuous question, doesn't it? It's where you're from. But if you select your country of residence, you end up buying travel insurance. And in fact, if you don't want travel insurance, you have to open up the drop-down and then pick no travel insurance required, which is sandwiched between Latvia and Lithuania. For some reason, it's not even alphabetical. It makes no sense at all. Why would it appear there? So, I mean, what's really clever about this is in the other examples we looked at, the opt-in had been defaulted, so you could see on the page what they were trying to do. But in this case, they're actually tricking the user to put it in their basket themselves. So probably from a legal point of view, they might be slightly better off, although obviously I'm not a lawyer, but kind of quite clever there. So, no travel insurance required. What happens if you don't fill in that drop-down box at all? Let's have a look. So if you skip it and you get to an error condition when you try and submit the form, it'll say, instead of highlighting buy AXA travel insurance or highlighting the text below, all they do is highlight just this box here, right? Because they want as many people as possible to focus in on just that question because it sounds innocuous and they'll end up buying stuff that they didn't mean to. So it's very clever. Okay, so let's remember it's your first day in your new job, okay? And it comes to the end of the day and you're feeling a bit depressed and a bit mixed up and confused, right? So you go to the supermarket to buy some junk food and some beers and stuff, and you start to think about, you know, what would opt-out upsells be like if they were in the real world? And thinking about it, they're actually the digital equivalent of a supermarket manager putting something in your trolley when you're not looking. So you'd be there sort of getting your milk, and he'd run up behind you with an organic chicken and slip it into the trolley and run off before you've turned around again. And you can imagine the argument would be, well, I didn't force you to buy anything, sir. I was just merely recommending that you bought it. And you can take that out of your trolley any time. You know, I saw you were buying sage and onion. I thought this would go together well. But, you know, when you think about it in a real-world metaphor, it's obviously a scam. And the reality of it is that the reason why you would do something like that is to trick people into buying it, right? People won't notice and they'll end up making purchases. So what's amazing is just the sheer number of brands that are doing this kind of thing. This is a list of some of the brands that are named on dartpatterns.org at the moment. And you can see there's some big names there. You've got Hotels.com, Nike, Orbitz, Facebook. Well, Facebook's kind of obvious, but... so the fact is, all these big brands are giving small up-and-coming brands, businesses, the green light. They're basically saying, if you want to be big and successful like us, this is how you have to do it. This is the normal right way of doing things. So out of our recipes so far, remember we've got the aggressive environment and the huge emphasis on metrics. We've also now got social proof. So designers are going with the herd and seeing what all the other bigger brands are doing. And that kind of interests me, that particular one, because I think we can use that to our advantage to sort of stop these sort of practices happening. Okay, so let's just say for the sake of argument that you give in to your dark side for the purpose of our thought experiment, okay? So you go ahead and you change the insurance default to opt-out on that page. And insurance purchase rates double overnight, which sounds great. You know, you saved your job and the job of the people in your team. You think, wow. And all within the first few days of my new job. Great. And you go and see your new boss, but instead of a smile, you see a familiar frown. And actually, he explains to you that even though the sales have gone up, now the call center's overwhelmed with cancellation calls, and you have to go off and fix it. So as you leave that meeting, you realize that undo is the enemy of a dark pattern designer, right? An effective dark pattern has to make it very easy for a user to get into a situation, and then it has to make it very hard for them to get out of it. So easy in, difficult out. It has to have that sort of dynamic, otherwise a dark pattern can't work. Easy in, difficult out. Easy in, difficult out. But let's have a look at what LA Fitness do when they're using this sort of formula. So if you want to sign up to LA Fitness in the States, you can go on their website. It's very, very polished, and you can sign up and pay by credit card and become a member that way. And you can imagine they probably spent money on usability testing and got real users into a lab and spent thousands trying to perfect that, because they want as many people who start that process to finish it. And there's a huge amount of cash value in that, right? But if you want to then cancel your membership, well, if you dig around on the site, you'll find the opposite sort of processes true. You actually have to send a cancellation letter to a specific address. You can't send it to your local gym. You have to send it to a specific central address. So you can see they're trying to make it as hard as possible for you to get out, right? Because they'll therefore have more members and therefore make more money. So you could sort of suspect, oh, it's a legacy system. It's like some legal processes require paper, right? But, I mean, not in this day and age. If you see anything that requires you to switch modes to telephone or to post, someone's designed it like that to stop you from doing something, or at least to discourage you as much as they can within the scope of the law. Okay, let's look at Orbitz.com. This is a bit more relevant to your low-cost airline that you work up, right, because they do travel. So going on to Orbitz.com and buying a ticket is very easy, right? You go on there, you search for flights, find your tickets, and you can make the purchase, and the whole thing will take about 5 minutes. If you then realize you bought your insurance by mistake, let's see how they design the process on the way out. So the same level of care and understanding of human psychology goes into both designing both of these sort of layers, right? So getting out, well, you'll find a 24-hour call center number on the website, and that seems good. 24 hours sounds like it's going to be good customer service, right? You make the call, and then you'll find out that actually you can't. You'll find out that actually you have to call the insurance company in order to do the cancellation. And the thing is, they're only Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. Now that's actually very clever, because that means some people will try and call on the weekend or in the evening, and that involves a big delay, of a few days, or at least the night, right? So, and that, by having that delay, some people are just going to forget or give up, which is great news. Less cancellation equals more money. So ultimately, if you get through that big hurdle, you can call the insurance company and cancel it. But then we're looking at, up to 2 days versus 5 minutes. And you kind of think about the difference in that scale. It's huge. There's no mistakes going on there. They've done that very carefully and on purpose. So let's go back to our recipe so far. We have got the aggressive, high-pressure working environment. We've got a really big blinkered emphasis on metrics, the social proof. And you can see there's an empty box there, so there's a fourth item I want to talk to you about. And I'd actually like to phrase this one as a question, okay? Why is it that in SEO, they've always recognized the difference between black hat and white hat practices, but in UI design, people don't really talk about it? I mean, there's me, I talk about black hat stuff, and I've only been talking about it for the last few months. There's maybe 1 or 2 other people in the States who go on about it, but that's out of an industry of thousands and thousands of people. Why don't we differentiate in the same way that SEO people do? And they've been doing it right since the dawn of search engines. They've known about the difference. So, I have theory, and I'm going to tell you about it. My theory about this is that with SEO, the Google bot can pass the source code of every site on the web. Yeah, so SEO is implemented at a source code level, and the Google bot can detect it. But so it's passable, right? With UI design, on the other hand, you implement the UI design, at a source code level, but it occurs at the level of human psychology, which is like a whole level above. And bots can't work like that at the moment. Maybe in 50 or 100 years, we'll have bots that can mimic human cognitive fallacies, but right now, that doesn't happen. So we can't detect black hat UIs automatically in the way we can detect black hat SEO. So in the case of SEO, well, the reason why they've got that big line between the two is they get detected very easily and they get punished. In terms of black hat UI design, well, no one's really going to catch you very quickly, and you won't get penalized very hard either. So you might as well do it in some respects. Instead of being black and white, it's just shades of grey all the way down in UI design. So there you have it. You have a recipe of an aggressive working environment, a big emphasis on metrics, the social proof, and the fact that black hat UIs can't be passed. Okay, so that's kind of, I think, the formula that's making it happen. And I'd really like to ask you guys, I mean, what's there, 270 people from the industry in the room today? If we put our minds together, we can set it right. The initial effort I've made is to just set up dartpatterns.org, which is, a small initial effort. So I've got about a dozen or so different design patterns on there, of which we talked about 2 or 3 of them today. But I mean, that's just an initial step, right? What we need to do is something much bigger and involving all of us. I think we need a code of ethics. It doesn't have to be a big, heavy, complicated thing like that. Just a simple but clear set of patterns that we are and aren't allowed to use, okay? So I looked on, while I was doing my research, looked on the IXDA website. They don't have a code of ethics on there. And on the UPA site, well, they have a code of ethics, but it's kind of vague. And with kind of vagueness like that, it's very easy to kind of argue your way around something and just kind of think of yourself as being ethical when you're not. We need something that's a lot more specific. The other thing that I think will be fun to do will be to publicly humiliate all the big brands that are currently using Dart patterns on a regular basis to improve their conversion rates. Let's name and shame them, and let's write to them and say, why are you still doing this? Because at the moment, you can kind of get away with it without having a big negative impact on your brand. But as an industry, if we start frowning on that, then they will shy away from it because they don't like their brands to be damaged, right? And let's embarrass them into giving up. So I'm kind of coming to the end of my talk now. Kind of gone through it at quite a pace, actually, so I'll have time for some questions in a minute. But, I mean, this is the situation that I want us to be in. I want to have a situation where new, young, up-and-coming designers will have ammunition to respond to their bosses when they're asked to do unethical work. I want them to be able to say things like, actually, boss, that design pattern you're asking me to do is forbidden by the professional association that I'm a member of. Or that, if we do it, we'll get named and shamed and publicly humiliated, which is not good for our brand. I want people to be able to say no easily, and we have to help them to do that. So for this to happen, we all have to join in. And if you're not helping, in a way, you're actually part of the problem. So thanks very much. That's my talk. So cheers.